Should Jacob Zuma step down? The South African president has apologised for the latest scandal over the misuse of public money. The ruling African National Congress says it still supports him. But for how long? And how are Zuma's many scandals impacting the party once led by Nelson Mandela? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Martine Dennis. South African President Jacob Zuma has long been considered something of an escape artist, evading several scandals since he first emerged into the political spotlight. But events this week will cost him financially and perhaps politically as well. Zuma has been found to have violated the constitution when he refused to pay back public money he'd spent on home improvements. Now, opposition leaders are calling for him to step down and suggesting impeachment if he doesn't. Now, will this latest accusation be the one to sink President Zuma? And if so, at what price for the ANC? We'll get to our guests in just a moment. But first, Tanya Page sets the stage for us from Johannesburg.
The country's highest court delivered the final damning word on the President and the National Assembly. Both breached the Constitution. It ordered the President to repay the state coffers for home improvements unrelated to security, things like an amphitheatre and a swimming pool. In a statement broadcast live to the nation, the President said the gross overspend should never have happened.
The matter has caused a lot of frustration and confusion, for which I apologize on my behalf and on behalf of government.
But he defended his actions, saying he had always intended to pay back the money.
I respect the judgment and will abide by it. I have consistently stated that I would pay an amount towards the Nkandla non-security upgrades.
But Zuma was dismissive of the demand he repay some of the money spent on upgrading his sprawling rural home known as Nkandla. The country's corruption watchdog investigated after costs ballooned. The public protector said he should repay a portion of the $16 million spent on non-security features. But he dismissed the findings, and the African National Congress-led government issued several reports that exonerated him from any wrongdoing. At the start of the Constitutional Court hearing, the President did a U-turn, acknowledging he did owe some money. But that's not enough for his biggest critics.
The economic freedom fighters say they will force Zuma from office. They're encouraging South Africans to take to the streets. The opposition Democratic Alliance wants him to resign, and they called his address to the nation contradictory and insulting. They may not have won his resignation, but they certainly have a lot of ammunition ahead of this year's local elections.
The ANC has wholeheartedly backed Zuma and thanked him for humbling himself with an apology. Events of the last few days underscore the dominance of the ANC, which still enjoys the support of the vast majority of South Africans, although the President and the party are under unprecedented pressure. Tanya Page, Al Jazeera, Johannesburg.
Now, this particular scandal, it's known as the Nkandla scandal, is not President Zuma's first. In 2005, he was accused of accepting bribes from international arms manufacturers to influence South Africa's largest post-apartheid arms deal. Now, the charges against Zuma were dropped in 2009, just before he became president, but his financial advisor went to jail. While the arms case was ongoing, Zuma was charged over the alleged rape of a friend's daughter. He was acquitted of that in May 2006. Zuma's friendship with the influential Gupta family has been under scrutiny. The Guptas, with their wide-ranging business interests, were allegedly able to offer cabinet positions to several members of parliament last year. And last month, the Constitutional Court upheld the judgment that Zuma's government violated international law last year when it failed to arrest the Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir whilst on a visit to Johannesburg. Let's introduce our guests now. Joining us from Johannesburg is Mzwaneli Manyi, former cabinet spokesman. He's also the president of Progressive Professionals Forum. Also in Johannesburg, we have Dali Mpofu, who's national chair of the Economic Freedom Fighters, the EFF. And here in Doha with me is Thembisa Fakude, who's a researcher at the Al Jazeera Centre for Studies. Welcome to you all. Can I start with you, please, first, Mzwaneli in Johannesburg. The president, despite making his apology and then getting a statement of support from the Secretary-General of the ANC shortly after, he's in a very difficult place right now.
No, I think it's important for all of us to understand that President Zuma is a very popular man in the country, a lot of support on the ground, something that the opposition party does not like, and they are trying to do everything possible to bring him down. This is a man who the last time a court of law ever found him guilty was in 1963 during apartheid days. So I'm first and foremost dealing with a very innocent man here. Indeed, we've had the Concord ruling, and because he's a law-abiding citizen, he has unreservedly welcomed the judgment and has committed to implement all the 11 orders as spelled out by the Constitutional Court. And indeed, the African National Congress, the major ruling party in South Africa, has appreciated and welcomed the apology by the president, because indeed it did the right thing by apologizing and by ensuring that he's going to implement the order of the court. So I don't understand why is it that people are still uptight when the court has been the final arbiter and has said what is it that must happen, and there's not one challenge by the president in terms of the orders that must be implemented. So the president is going to implement all the orders. We should be saying, thank you, Constitutional Court, and the country should be moving forward. But because opposition party religiously fails to convince the will of the people of this country, they religiously fail to win the confidence of the people in South Africa, they are using everything possible to try and bring the African National Congress down. And right now, their strategy is to discredit the president so that they can discredit the African National Congress.
Okay, all right.
So this is all just a selfish, expedient claim.
Can I take those points and put those to Dali Mpofu, also in Johannesburg? So basically, the president has apologised. He's going to do what he's supposed to do, pay back some of the money, whatever. I don't really want to get into the detail of Nkandla Gate, because in many ways that's over. But what I'm interested in is your particular strategy for making capital, political capital, for that is what it is, from this latest scandal surrounding President Zuma.
No, it's not political capital. The Economic Freedom Fighters brought this case to the Constitutional Court exactly so that what is happening now should happen. I think both Mr. Manyi and Mr. Mantashe are missing the point by a mile. Firstly, it is not opposition parties only that are calling for Mr. Zuma to step down. It is the bulk of the South African population. Yesterday, one of the Rivonia trialists in the Mandela trial, Nelson Mandela's trial, Ahmed Kathradas, called for Zuma to step down. That is not an opposition party. That is one of the most important people within the African National Congress.
Indeed,
Secondly,
Dali, can I just ask you to pause there, because we'd like to look at that open letter that was published by Ahmed Kathradas.
Yes.
We just want to look at that a little bit more closely, because as Dali Mpofu referred to him, he's one of the grandees of the ANC. He spent many years in jail on Robben Island with Mandela himself, and now he's broken his silence and he's calling for President Zuma to step down. As I said, his name is Ahmed Kathradas, and he'd previously vowed not to speak out about internal ANC matters, but now he feels so strongly that he's written this open letter to the president, and in it he lists the various scandals that Zuma has weathered over the years, and then he asks if we are to continue to be guided by growing public opinion and the need to do the right thing, would he not seriously consider stepping down? Dear Comrade President, he goes on, don't you think your continued stay as president will only serve to deepen the crisis of confidence in the government of the country? And so, Dali and Mpofu, that was a very significant intervention, it would appear, from, as I say, a very important figure in terms of the liberation of South Africa. What has been the net effect, do you think, of Ahmed Kathradas' intervention?
Well, the net effect would have been, to any logical person, to neutralize the kind of statement that was made by both Mantashe and Mr. Manyi to say these are just calls from the opposition. But obviously they have not been listening to their own stalwarts. But the second point is that the President and Mr. Manyi have said that they will abide by all the court orders of the Constitutional Court. Now, one of the orders of the Constitutional Court is that the President failed in his constitutional duty to respect the Constitution. So there is no other way to abide by that order except to step down. How else do you abide by a court order that says effectively you are not fit for the office of the President except by stepping down? The apology, that's fine, but obviously there must be legal implications. Otherwise, every murderer would simply apologize and then we let him off. Surely that's not how the world works. Even if we accept his apology, that apology must go together with a resignation.
Thembisa Fakude here in Doha with me. What Dali and Mpofu is suggesting that as a consequence of this Constitutional Court ruling effectively against the President, that he is therefore no longer fit for office. And yet, as we've heard from our other guest in Johannesburg, the President retains a huge amount of popular support.
Yes, I think there are two things there. What Mr. Mzwanele Manyi said about the President, the last time the President was found guilty was in 1963, that's true, but there's been a number of indiscretions that over the past the President has committed, and that has led to the impatience, and it has amplified the calls from the civil society to have the President removed. Now, whether that's a popular call or is a wide South African call, it's still questionable, because currently what we've had a lot of interactions within the social media and English middle-class media that has been calling for the resignation of the President. But we still have quite a number of people, particularly those within the villages and other places, black-dominated areas in South Africa that we haven't had much from. So I do agree with Mzwanele Manyi that the President is still by and large popular. And I think when they launch their political manifesto, the election manifesto for the municipal elections, that's when we are most likely to see how the President, how still is the President popular within the various constituencies in South Africa.
Mzwanele in Johannesburg, that's a point that Thembisa makes, is that obviously you've got really important metropolitan elections coming up later on this year. That will be the first electoral test of how much damage has the ANC sustained. Already, it's not looking great for the ANC, even some suggestion that the ANC could lose some of the biggest cities in South Africa.
Yeah, indeed, that is a wishful thinking of a lot of these opposition parties. What are the facts? I think it's important for Mr. Advocate Mpofu, when he makes his points, to quote if there's any particular empirical evidence that he's relying on, because what typically happens is all those that are affluent and that can make it to the media tend to constitute a public opinion. But the fact of the matter is that the African National Congress is the only party in this country that has increased the number of provinces under its control. In 1994, when the whole democracy started, African National Congress was controlling 7 out of the 9 provinces. As we see it now, the African National Congress is controlling 8 of those provinces, where it's just one more province before it controls all the provinces in the country. In terms of the judgment, by the way, I think it's important for Mr. Mpofu not to create anything misleading here. The body of the report has got a whole range of things, and I don't think it's useful to take out a line somewhere in the body of the judgment.
No, all right.
And
I understand that point. And going to you, Dali. Let's move this a little bit forward because we've already referred to the upcoming metropolitan elections, which are important. Now, the EFF doesn't really stand a chance, does it, of unseating the ANC? You've got no chance of getting him impeached in Parliament. So what are you going to do?
No, I think, this kind of debate misses the point completely from both gentlemen. This is not a popularity contest. We cannot contest the fact that Mr. Zuma is popular. They won the election by more than 60%. I mean, we would be foolhardy to contest that. This is about a constitutional obligation that has been breached. It has nothing to do with counting of votes. The question is that when the ANC removed President Mbeki, it had a mandate of more than the 62% that it has now. It had 69%. So the same argument should have been used. But because there was a court ruling that said negative things about him, he was recalled as the president of the country. They did not, as they are doing now, split hairs and say, oh, well, we have a popular mandate and therefore we cannot act, because they knew that the duty to the Constitution was larger than just counting people. So it's disingenuous to now try and appeal to the fact that the ANC is the majority party, which no sane person can contest. That is not what this is about.
And Thembisa, so Dali is referring to the fact that the ANC seems to be closing ranks completely behind Jacob Zuma, and without the ANC's internal processes by which they can recall a president, as he mentioned, they've done it before with Thabo Mbeki. What really can be done if the ANC is not prepared to admit that they're in perhaps a state of crisis, as some would say?
Well, there are two options. Of course, one is to hope that there will be enough numbers in Parliament, which is almost impossible, to vote for the impeachment of the president, which is not going to happen. The second option is to mobilize people to fill up the streets of Johannesburg, as we've seen in other countries who are going through the same processes, Brazil, Venezuela. It's most likely to happen in South Africa because the ANC still commands a lot of support. So I think that the quite limited options that the opposition has at the moment that could lead to the president leaving power. The only thing that can happen is for the opposition to at least pray that there is a majority within Parliament that can vote for the impeachment of a president. But I don't see any other option or political option or way out of this challenge that the South Africans are facing at the moment.
Mzwaneli, let me put this to you then. Are you prepared to acknowledge that all of the shenanigans surrounding the Zuma presidency, both terms, that they're doing damage to not just the ANC, but to the country at a time, of course, when the economy is in dire straits? You've got unemployment, around 25%, that none of this can really be afforded by South Africa when you really need to be buckling down and getting your economy in shape. And for that, of course, you need the international community's support.
You've just echoed the sentiments of the African National Congress, that the most urgent task at hand right now is to implement the Constitutional Court orders. And I think it's very important that Advocate Mpofu must not create confusion and mislead the people. When President Mbeki was recalled, he was not the president of the ANC at the time, which is what creates a complication. The African National Congress, NEC, does not have the authority to recall somebody that has been elected by branches of the ANC. That is the fundamental difference.
But I don't want us to get too bogged down in the internal processes of the ANC.
I'm sorry.
Please.
Can I come in?
Please
can
do.
I come into this? The gentleman is totally confused. We're not asking for President Zuma to be recalled as the president of the ANC. The ANC can do whatever it likes with him. But he must be recalled as the president of the country, as Mr. Mbeki was recalled as the president of the country. It's exactly the same situation.
I think the advocate is confused because, you see, the president of the country is not mutually exclusive in terms of the resolutions of the ANC. Once the ANC elects you as the president, then of the ANC, then you are almost like automatic into the president of the country.
all right, OK, I can see we're not going to agree on this particular matter, but it is a matter of internal process. What interests me much more is the damage, real or otherwise, being sustained by South Africa, as I said before, at a time when it can really ill afford it. So, I mean, do you think that you can measure, you can quantify the amount of damage that all of this controversy is doing to the ruling party and therefore the country?
Look, I think
the damage is untold.
What is important is for the...
Sorry, Mzwanele first, and then I'll come to you, Dali.
Okay. Yes, I think the biggest people that are causing damage here are people like the opposition parties, parties like EFF and the DA, who refuse to accept the rule of law. The Constitutional Court has made its ruling, and the ANC is very desperate to implement the ruling, and all they want to do is to infer their own political agendas into the ruling and do things that the Constitutional Court did not ask for. Both the President and the African National Congress have committed to implementing all the orders as stated. If the opposition party feels that they want to do their impeachment process, even that is provided for. Instead of making all the noise and creating chaos in the country, they should orderly go into Parliament, seek to persuade other members, and let the democratic process prevail. But instead, because they are not pro-democracy, they just want to create a spectacle and chaos. All they want is to roam around the streets and create chaos. And that is going to continue to damage the image of the country. So we call upon opposition parties to act in a responsible and an orderly manner. If they want to impeach, no problem, must go to Parliament and do it orderly there and stop creating a spectacle on the streets and want to occupy buildings, all kinds of irrational activities that they want to embark on. That's what is going to plunge this country.
All right, Dali, I mean, he makes a reasonable point, doesn't he? Even combined with the official opposition, the Democratic Alliance, you don't have the numbers, do you? You simply don't have the numbers to be able to enforce an impeachment process, do you? So, and I would suggest that perhaps the EFF may have impinged upon its own political credentials by forming an alliance with the DA in order to pursue this action against the president.
Okay, let me say this for the last time. This has nothing to do with the numbers. It's about the supremacy of the Constitution. I'll give you an example. The ANC, when they were supporting Zuma as refusal to pay, used the numbers in Parliament and passed a resolution that exonerated him. We took that to court. This is a constitutional democracy. And the court has now ruled that the National Assembly and that so-called majority acted unlawfully. So similarly, if we bring impeachment proceedings and they use their majority irrationally to protect Zuma, the court will overrule them. It doesn't work like that. This is not a majoritarian system. It's a constitutional democracy. The final arbiter is the Constitutional Court. If you can understand that point, then we are not going to be wasting time about the size of this party or that party. It is about whether the Constitution is being abided by.
Okay.
Similarly, when we demonstrated in Parliament...
I'm afraid we're really running short of time, I'm afraid. And I want to give the last word to Thembisa, who's in the studio. Thembisa, this whole saga has been described as being unseemly and very damaging for South Africa. But one winner has been pointed out, and that is the democratic institutions of South Africa. They have triumphed in this process.
Yes, I think so. But it's also very important at this point to mention that there's been a number of indiscretions that the President of South Africa has committed. And that has led to the amplification from the civil society to call him to resign. But yes, I do agree with you. This has been a very good way of testing the shock absorbers of our system, the democratic system. And hopefully this will also be exemplary to all other African countries. Because South Africa, I think, has been an example in terms of how democracy works. Even now, when you see two members of the political parties sitting and discussing this without actually fighting or killing each other, that in itself is a positive development in African politics.
Thembisa, thank you very much indeed. We've run out of time. Thank you all very much indeed. Mzwaneli Manyi in Johannesburg, Dali and Mpofu also in Johannesburg. Thank you very much. And of course, Thembisa, Fakude here in Doha with me. Thank you very much indeed. And of course, thank you for watching. You can see the programme again anytime you like by going to our website, aljazeera.com. For more discussion, should you want it, you can go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter, our handle @AJ Inside Story. From me, Martine Dennis, and the whole team, it's bye for now.